we have an evaluate question involving division. It's not a multi-step question, so you probably would not be allowed to use a calculator here. So you're going to need to show all your workings to get your answer. When you're dividing with decimals, I find it's helpful to change everything into whole numbers. If you look at this guy here, there's 2 decimal places. This one only has 1. But if I move this guy 2 decimal places to the right, I have to move this one 2 decimal places to the right. So I'll add a 0, and I'll do this. So 1.28 divided by 0.8 is really the same as 128 divided by 80. Now, there's more than one way to do this. We'll look at long division, but you should do some estimation first. You should realize that 180 is 80, and 280s is 160. So there's only one of these guys that can divide into 128. So we know that our answer is going to be 1 decimal something. So now with that number sense, we can work on long division. So I have 128 divided by 80. And I know that there's only 180. 80 cannot divide into 1, cannot divide into 12, but it can divide into 128 one time. So 1 multiplied by 80 is 80. And then I subtract. And I get 48. And I can't divide 80 into 48, so I need to add a 0. And once I add on a 0 and carry it down, that's where my decimal place goes. Right there. And this makes sense with what we estimated here. Now 80 will go into 480 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. So 6 times 80 is 480. So we'll put a 6 here, and this becomes 480. We subtract. We get a 0 remainder. So that tells us, therefore, that 128 divided by 80, which is the same as 1.28 divided by 0.8 or 0.80. Either way, the answer is going to equal 1.6. Another way you could do it is if you realize that it's 128 divided by 80, you could write it in fraction form. And you can keep breaking it down into lowest terms. So you recognize they're both even, so you can divide it by 2. You get 64 over 40, even again, divide it by 2. You get 36 over 20, even again, divide it by 2, and you get 18 over 10, which is not 1.6. So I've made a mistake there. Let's see. Half of 28 is 64. Half of 80 is 40. Half of 64 is not 36. Half of 64 is 32. And half of 32 is 16. And 16 divided by 10 is 1.6. And I showed you this on purpose because I want you to realize that you should always have an idea for what the answer is going to be before you get there. And it's good sometimes to check it 2 different ways so you can make sure that you're checking your answer correctly.